Now,
Your review, I'm gonna react to the Lil Durk and King Von story.
I'm going to cover this Lil Durk story and case from 2019. If you don't know what story I'm talking about, well, that's why I'm here, right? We're going to get into it in detail in a second, but back in 2019, Lil Durk was allegedly involved in a shooting in the Atlanta, and the charges actually ended up getting dropped recently, which is why I'm covering this story. Before we get to that, obviously like the video and make sure you're subscribed.
Is he talking to LeBron or somebody else? I'm
waiting. All right, thank you. Now that you've liked the video and subscribed, hey, let's get into it. On February 5th, 2019, Atlanta police received a report about a shooting that went down near a restaurant in the city. The shooting allegedly took place in the parking lot of the Varsity, located on 61 North Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia, just before 6 a.m. The investigators arrived to the scene and found a man on the ground outside the restaurant suffering from a gunshot wound to his leg. The man was identified as then 23-year-old Alexander Weatherspoon. Alexander was in serious condition. He was quickly taken to the Atlantic Medical Center where he received treatment and he survived. Alexander was eventually released following surgery. The police at the time stayed very low-key about any info surrounding the case. All they revealed was at the time they found Alexander on the ground with a bullet to his thigh in the parking lot outside the Varsity, and they also revealed that an eyewitness had stated that they saw a dark SUV leaving the scene. The police also stated that the shooting had apparently went down after some type of argument broke out between two men. 13 bullet casings were recovered at the scene along with a firearm. After the shooting, a representative for the restaurant said the following: "Early this morning, a shooting took place in the parking lot at the Varsity on North Avenue while our restaurant was closed. Thankfully, no Varsity employees or customers were on site, and we're cooperating with the Atlanta Police Department to help in any way possible." On May 30, 2019, a couple months after the alleged shooting had went down, Derek Banks, professionally known as Lil Durk, became a wanted man in connection to the shooting. An arrest warrant had been issued in his name and the police were looking for Durk. Durk was facing 5 different felony charges for this alleged shooting: criminal attempt to commit murder, aggravated assault, possession of a firearm during commission of felony, possession of firearm by convicted felon, and one more charge is what Durk was facing. Lil Durk and his legal team quickly announced that he would be turning himself into the authorities, and so that's what happened. Lil Durk did an interview just moments before he was about to surrender himself to the police and said the following.
That's right. We're outside APD headquarters now, as you said, and his lawyer says Lil Durk is still in the Fulton County Jail as his legal team works to get a bond set. But before he surrendered, we were with him in his lawyer's office.
You're about to surrender as we speak.
Yeah.
How come?
Because I have nothing to hide. Like, I have nothing to run from.
A rapper's ride. Soon after we spoke, Durk Banks, a.k.a. the performer Lil Durk, emerged from his lawyer's space and headed toward an SUV. Soon after that, he stepped out in front of the Fulton County Jail. One of his lawyers says he was swiftly taken into custody there, having swiftly flown back to Atlanta after he found out he was wanted.
We found out we had a warrant. We were actually on tour. Once I heard, I immediately came back.
He's willing to turn himself in and take care of what he needs to take care of.
We immediately canceled the tour.
He's got a multi-million-dollar salary music career going.
Did you do it? Did you shoot this man? Did you commit the other crimes of which you're accused?
No.
You can't come back to your hood, huh? No.
Durk also released a record on that same day titled "Turn Myself In," where he was doubling down on his innocence. False accusation, why they name dropping, they want to know if I'm rapping or robbing, taking these drugs for my family problems, Durk rapped. Shortly after his arrest, sometime in mid-June, Lil Durk was in court for a hearing where his alleged involvement in the shooting was presented. Davon Bennett, professionally known as the late King Von, was also a co-defendant in this case as well. And Von was allegedly present during the shooting with Durk. An Atlanta police detective by the name of Jeffrey Churchill stated that he spoke to a witness who was at the scene when the incident took place, and the witness claimed the following. She stated that she was standing outside talking to Durk and Von in front of a cigar bar around 5 a.m. on February 5th when they saw a fight going down in the car in front of them. She then stated that Durk allegedly pulled out a piece and shots went off. Durk and Vaughn were both sitting inside the courtroom listening to the witness testimony as prosecutors described the case as gang-related. The prosecutor stated that both Lil Durk and Vaughn were members of the Black Disciples, a large street gang based in Chicago, and that they personally knew the victim. Alexander Weatherspoon allegedly had $30,000 on him, an expensive chain, and a nice whip, and that's why Durk and Vaughn targeted him, or so that's what they claimed. Detective Churchill, however, stated that he didn't find any evidence that the shooting was in fact gang-related. While on a stand, he also claimed that Alexander Weatherspoon had a gun on him. Durk's legal team then asked Detective Churchill if it was possible that Alexander Weatherspoon was the one who fired the initial shots. You don't see Mr. Banks, that's Durk, shooting on a street at any time. The only time you believe he was shooting is when he was in the camouflage Jeep, correct? Durk's lawyer asked the detective. Detective Churchill responded by saying that was the only time I could see him shooting. It was also claimed that police had video evidence that showed Lil Durk firing his weapon at the victim several times with his hand outside the car.
They were hanging out. They went to a studio to make music.
The rapper and Bennett listened to the evidence against them in court. Police told the judge later that night the victim, Banks, Bennett, and others went to a nightclub, a gas station, and ended up in the parking lot of the Varsity. That's when Weatherspoon said he was robbed and shot.
He said his chain was snatched off his neck, and he had $30,000 stolen from him, and they stole the vehicle he was driving.
Police say Banks was seen on tape shooting a gun.
You see Mr. Banks' arm out the window firing several shots at the victim, towards the victim.
After a 2-hour-long court hearing with testimonies and statements by both the prosecutors and defense, the judge decided that there was enough evidence for the case to go to trial.
Granny ain't feeling too well. Shoot out with the police, ain't going to jail.
Lil Durk was shortly after this granted a $250,000 bond. Some restrictions that came with this release: a curfew from 11 p.m. until 7 p.m., an ankle monitor at all times, no contact with gang members, and he couldn't be near or possess any weapons and had to stay at least 200 yards away from the victim. Davon Bennett, King Von, was also released on a $300,000 bond as well.
Got a drop on this flexin' nigga. He from Tennessee, I had a thought.
Now this case has actually been pending ever since then. Apart from everything I brought up in this video, not a lot of info was out there. Lil Durk, although he had these allegations against him, never officially got indicted for this crime. Now, over 3 years later, the charges against Durk in his case have officially been dropped. A motion was recently filed, specifically on October 17, and this is what it said. The facts of this case have been reviewed, and although it appears that probable cause existed for the defendant's arrest, Lil Durk, the decision of the district attorney at this time is not to prosecute the above-named defendants. The reason for this decision are as follows: prosecutorial discretion. Prosecutorial discretion, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's essentially when the prosecution decides whether or not they want to continue with charging a person for said crime. If they happen to not want to charge them, well, this could be for multiple reasons. One of the main reasons usually is the fact that they don't have enough evidence to charge the defendant. And so, since the legal burden of proving that the defendant carried out said crimes is on the prosecution, if they feel like all the evidence they have isn't enough, usually what tends to happen is they drop the case, like in this situation right here. By the way, this decision to drop the case was actually made by Fawny Willis. I'm probably gonna have to make an entire video on this woman right here. She's the Fulton County District Attorney who's one of the star prosecutors in the YSL RICO indictment. I think this
I see her before, like, yes, on social media and shit, like, about the whole Young Thug and YSL shit.
shooting case against Durk getting dropped has a lot to do with what's going on in A right now. Mainly talking about the YSL RICO case and all the investigating they've been doing as far as that. A lot of the resources right now are obviously going towards the YSL case. I mean, that is a huge case. So there's a lot going on in Atlanta right now, and they obviously have a finite amount of resources. Going after Lil Durk in a 3-year-old case where they don't have enough evidence against him isn't something they're trying to waste their precious resources on when all this other stuff is going on in their backyard. So I think that's played a huge part here, because they could have kept on dragging this out, but that would obviously take their attention away from all the other shit that's going on in Atlanta right now. King Von was of course also a co-defendant in this case, but Von isn't here today, so that obviously plays a huge aspect as well. If King Von was still here, my guess is they would have at least, tried going after him as a second option in order to shake up things with Durk, because if you hurt Von, you also hurt Durk, because shit, Durk had a lot of love for Von. They were practically, not literally, but practically, that was his brother. Since the charges have now been dropped, Lil Durk can officially put this entire case behind him and move on. Anyway, there you have it. Don't leave this video without liking it. Come on.
Yeah, that's the video. So yeah, What y'all thoughts on Lil Durk and shit? In this case and shit. What y'all thought about his lawyer? I'm not gonna lie, his lawyer kind of cute. His lawyer that cute. I ain't gonna lie. Like, and I heard like, King Von, hadn't he like stayed alive, he would've be indicted and shit. But so yeah, bro. Like, Lil Durk can breathe now. Like he could breathe now. Like, he's valid right now. So yeah, make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the vibes. Or just checking out you are.